Good evening. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Make sure this is all behaving according to plan. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. Hope you had a good Memorial Day. Kind of felt like every other day in a lot of respects. I know it was a more important day for obvious reasons, but the days all kind of run together over the past 7 or 8 weeks, and maybe it's kind of nice to have something that was a line of demarcation, you know. This is a day that's special, so hope you had a good one. What I wanted to address tonight was the song that I wrote with John Oates. That was the song title is the same as the book. For those of you just joining us, I know a lot of you heard all this before. I worked with John on an album where we all used this book that my grandfather wrote many years ago as a jumping off point, as an inspiration for these songs. And the album, in case you didn't know, is called Beauty and Ruin, which leads me to a little story. I originally thought we were going to use this title for the album. And so did John, and so did David Kalmusky, who co-produced it with us. And I have mentioned this before, but forgive me because it's one of my favorite anecdotes about making this record was I came whooshing into Nashville one day when I knew we were going to be mixing the record, and they'd already been working on it and doing a fine job without my help. And I said, well, guys, how's it going? And John said, well, the songs sound really good. And I said, all right. And he said, yeah, and we've also changed the name of the record. And I went, oh, tell me more. So, as I've mentioned before, perhaps, they sort of felt like the title Beauty and Ruin sort of summed up the feel of the record and of the book. And I had to agree. It was a great direction to go. That's that song I wrote with Dana Cooper, and the rest is history as far as I'm concerned. But I've been thinking a lot about this song, and it's kind of epic in length. It's a little longer than some of the songs, I think, maybe 6 minutes or something. And we didn't worry too much about that when we were making the record, because those of you who know about making records for the commercial market, you worry about keeping it short enough that it'll get played on the radio and all that sort of thing. Things are so different now, and this record we felt was so different that we didn't worry about that very much. We felt like if we made a pretty good case that it was more of a concept record and that it was based on a book, that would give us some leeway and some license to do some things that you couldn't do on a typical radio record these days. And I'm glad we did it that way, and it's still getting played on the radio. So everybody wins. For those of you who haven't been following along, this is the old book that was published in '72. This is the new version that we reprinted, reformatted, new cover, all that stuff. And I want to thank everybody here in the States, and especially over in the UK. People have been buying the book and the CD, and that's really gratifying. So mailed a bunch of those out last week to folks on foreign shores, and that's cool. That was the idea. So one difference in the book is that my grandfather's book had these what he sort of referred to as hokey or undesirable ink drawings, and the publisher put those in there, and he didn't much like them, so we left them out. So if you do get the book, you're not going to get these. They're not, although they're quaint and they're kind of cool, and I'm glad they're on the original book, didn't really go with the way we wanted to reformat the book. So what I've been thinking about as it relates to this song, those of you who have been following along know that we didn't necessarily adhere to any strict rules about writing songs from the book. We just took what inspired us and wrote songs. So in the case of this song, I had written a good deal of it when I sent it along to John for him to help me finish. And I think what I was thinking about a number of sort of issues, or not issues so much as I don't know. There were just some things I was thinking about when I was putting this song together. One of which is obviously the title of the book refers to the fact that if what was, nothing is left. Well, at the end of the book, a couple of the characters are looking back on life they thought was solid, and a lot of what they thought was always going to be there for them wasn't anymore. And maybe that's just the way all life works out. You know, you don't you start out with a certain set of circumstances. It never stays the same. It changes. And as we've all learned in the past few weeks, it changes pretty drastically sometimes. That's one thing, was just the sort of the winds of change. You can't stop that stuff, and you shouldn't. It's going to come at us, and really, it's how you handle it. I guess ultimately is the issue. And I've been talking a lot about in these little visits about the character Laura, and I've been kind of critical of her behavior. Maybe a little too much. It's been pointed out, Renee, that and Wayne, that I was a little rough on her character, but I think ultimately she kind of did the best she could with the sort of energy and intuition that she showed up with, and maybe that's all any of us can do. But we gotta fight, the darker impulses, and we got to try and do the right thing when we have the opportunity. And hold that thought. Another thing that sort of came to me while I was writing this song was questioning what we're supposed to do with the stuff that comes at us. Right now, with this pandemic, with people's behavior around it, I've been thinking a lot about this song and the chorus, which I'll sing here in a minute, about what are we, and I've heard a lot of this in the media and with people, opinion writers, and just the public in general. What are we supposed to get from this? What are we going to learn? Are we going to learn anything? I look around at some of what's going on in our country, and I think we've learned almost nothing. And then I see a lot of people who seem to be learning quite a bit. And so I guess, it's like my grandfather liked to write about Adam and Eve and going all the way back to just bad decisions, and we'll find out in time, I suppose. But I think all of what happens to us happens for a reason. It's not coincidence, and it's what we do with it, how we react to it, what we learn from it. All that stuff's important. So, as a way of setting that up, I didn't have any one part of the book that inspired this. This was sort of an overarching, when I was thinking of it being a title cut, I wanted to build it out in a way as a song that spoke to a lot of that. But I did use the character of Laura as the pivotal person in the song, or the pivotal, the one who brought the circumstances on in the song that set about this big wave of change in these people's lives. And those of you who have been listening or who have read the book or talked to me about it know that she came into the lives of these people, and she had an agenda, and she had a thing that she wanted. And when things didn't go her way, she set out to get what she wanted, and that caused all kinds of irreversible harm, damage, set things in motion that she couldn't have imagined. So that whole law of unintended consequence thing, and I'm going to let you use your own imagination as it relates to what's going on currently in the world. But the facts are what the facts are. And so I decided to pick a section to read like I've been doing. I've been reading on these and talk about sort of the... I picked a section in the book where we're sort of looking back because that's what you get. You know, when you get through something, you get to look back and what is it they call that? An after action report. You know, after the battle or whatever, and you look back and see what you did right and what you did wrong, and so that's kind of what I thought I'd do. I'm going to set this up a little bit. One of the main characters in the book is the captain. He's the larger-than-life sort of used to be a soldier. I think of him as sort of a big, almost John Wayne-sized character. I'm not sure I like that analogy, but you can all relate to that, I guess, having seen movies. When we talk about in a perfect world being able to get a movie made about this book, we have a number of people that come to mind. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to jinx that, but big guy, you know. And ultimately, at the end of his life, he's kind of been laid low by circumstance and old age and all the things that we think are going to last forever, like our knees and our hips, our memories. All that stuff starts to fade and, dust to dust and all that stuff. So he's been through a lot. His wife's gone. She's died. His son that he raised as his own is gone. He's died. There's kind of not a lot left for him to live for because he's one of those guys that sort of lived for family and really just wanted to have a home full of laughter and love, and that slipped away. And the character Frank is also not there at this particular point in the book because he's been in prison. Before I forget, one of the sections I haven't really addressed in this book is the mystery part of this. When my grandfather published this, they called it a suspense-packed tale of Arkansas. That may be overselling it a little bit, but there is a whole part of this book that's about kind of a whodunit. And oddly enough, we didn't really address that in song, but I don't think I'm done writing about this book yet, if you get my drift. There could be more, maybe more, probably is more. So at this point, what I'd like to the section I'd like to read, the captain is sort of, he's sort of in the autumn of his life, I guess, would be the best way to put it. And it's hard to pick a spot to start here, but I'm gonna start in the middle of I'm just going to start at the top of this page. So, by the way, I'm going to read out of the old book because the print's bigger and I can see it, and I'm a little lit up a little better in here, lighting wise, so I can see better. It's page 136 of the old book if you happen across one. The captain seemed stronger than he had since the pinto pony had all but ended his sojourn here below. He faced up to the fact that the three corners of the life's puzzle had been scattered like fall leaves before a harsh and biting winter storm. With Laura, Jody, and me gone, he didn't have much will to live. Nothing he could say or do would restore even a semblance of those parts of the puzzle. He realized that so many of us live our lives out of season. In Indian summer we blossom out, but then it is too late. The cold frosts of winter nip the bloom in the bud, and the too late flower is doomed. A little side note, when I was reading this for the first time, I was just struck at the poetry of my granddad's writing. At least to me it felt that way, because I knew him as a pretty plain-spoken guy. So this was very instructive to read all this. Back to the book. The captain was now an old man, but he would not let the locust of time eat away the green of his spirit. He was never one to wallow in self-pity. Adversity, he knew, was part and parcel of every life. It wasn't always the burden that determined the final outcome, but the way it was carried, he reasoned. He had burdens enough and some to spare, but he had seen others struggling under greater loads. They had gone on. They had faced the sunshine and let the shadows fall behind them. He would go forth and do likewise. The Percherons and the Maud mule were too old for further service and had been turned out to pasture. He didn't want this to happen to him. Who does? He bought a second-hand truck and again started to cover the 3 counties to buy up surplus animals to make a living for Cindy and himself. Side note, Cindy is Laura's cousin who had come to live with them and helped everybody along and sort of saw everybody through their troubles. And one of the last people in the book left. More on that another time. There is nothing in this life as permanent as change. The captain soon learned that the buyer no longer made the price, and the seller had to take it or let it lie. The farmers now trucked their cattle into the county seat to market, where they were sold to the highest bidder in keen competition. One night on his way home, discouraged and disillusioned from a day of frustrating attempts to buy what went for naught, the captain lost control of his truck on the Dorcheat Bridge. They found him pinned beneath the wreck, where he must have been most of the night. So this is a guy that rode in the Spanish-American War with Roosevelt, had seen his way all through that last part of the century, had seen the country change, the Civil War, all that, and then made his way into the horse and, to the horseless carriage into the early part of the 20th century, where he had a truck, and that finally did him in. I don't know. Speaks to the change and our ability to adjust to it, and sometimes the change does us in, sometimes it doesn't, I guess. His life, rather than his death, Cindy wrote, was almost more than she could bear. He had tried unsuccessfully to carry on after his world had been rent asunder. It would have been better, much better, she was sure, had he died the day he was thrown from the pinto pony. He would have been spared so much futile living. And here's where my granddad gets really philosophical. The tragedy of longevity, she said, is that all the other guests leave the party first. The one left is there among the ashes, dirty dishes, and leftover food, crying, "Wait for me," in the empty room. So that's Cindy, I believe, in this passage, writing to Frank, who's still incarcerated. That has to do with the whodunit part. Carrying on with the reading. What is my cross, I thought, my wretchedness, my misery when compared to what his has been? As I looked back at all the seemingly mere trifles of the experiences, I wondered which was the most important in bringing us all to the place where we were. Thoughts of the death of the 3 I had loved and lost drifted like straws on the surface of my mind and left me with a profound and incurable melancholy. So this whole issue of sadness, melancholy, all that comes up in my granddad's writing a lot. And that helped me understand he and my grandmother a little, because there seemed to be a sadness about him when I was growing up. And it was hard to understand, it's not something anybody really talked much about, but at any rate, I've learned a lot. As I've said many times, I wish I could go back and ask him a lot of questions like, how much of this really happened? Who were these people really? How much of it was a product of your imagination? I know as a songwriter, all it takes sometimes is a word you hear or a phrase you hear on the news or something and sends you off down a path, and all of a sudden you've written a song. It's not about anybody in particular, in a book this dense and this full of people, you got to figure some of that happened to him. Before I do the song and turn you loose on Tuesday night, I want to talk about next week. It's going to be a really special song for me, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to include my co-writer on it, who's not living here in town anymore, and that's Shelley Ray Corntweed, who most of you know that are locals here in the Cedar Ridge, Colorado area. The song is called Cracks of Time, and just to set that up a little ahead of time, Shelley, I gave her a copy of the book early on, and she came to the store one day with lots of little sticky notes on it. And that's how that song got started. This song was one of those that we really didn't know what the band was going to do with it. I want to give a shout out to everybody that played on it. I played on it. John Oates played on it. Tom Bukovac, Greg Morrow, Steve Mackey. Who else? Well, they're all listed on the record. What a great band that John put together for this record and for the other one that we did together. And such a treat to be in the studio with some guys that you just give them a little bit of rope and they go, man. I mean, it's this song turned out to be more dramatic, more full of power than I ever thought. And I remember the day I wrote the chorus. I was sitting at the kitchen table and I thought, I've got something here, but I don't know what it's going to be yet. And John helped me take it to the next level. But anyway, I ramble. I digress. So I want to play this song, and then I'd like to mention also that I will be back next Tuesday. I'm going to hit the reverb this time. I forgot to do that the other night. And I appreciate everybody dropping in. I know that things are opening back up around the country. Be careful. Numbers are going to spike again. We're going to see stuff we don't want to see, and I don't want any of you to get sick. And I'm going to be careful. I hope you'll be careful. So this is Of What Was, Nothing Is Left. This house was a home when you came along. There was rhyme, there was reason, the place I belong. I knew just where I stood. Those golden days were my own. Safe in the tall grass of the innocent seeds I had sown. Everything changed the day you crashed into my world. On a dusty wind, a force of intention unfurled. My innocence shattered, my comfort and plans pushed aside. I let go of the reins, only along for the ride. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Now you take us out for the best of what was. What was, nothing is left. Oh, the want of a woman, the distraction of many a man. An angel, a savior, or a spirit who's made of the plan. broke all of the rules and all the good hearts in your way. Maybe I shouldn't blame you for the part that you felt you had to play. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Yeah, you tell me it's all for the best of what was. Nothing is left. Oh, the call of the wild, mother and child, nothing could stand in your way. There's no way on tomorrow, or all of the sorrow that will follow you all of your day. What's done is done. We can't live in the past. To hold back the sand on this sword is just too much to ask. These winds are relentless, demanding we change, blowing us on to our destiny, no matter the rain. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the place burn? Well, you tell me it's all for the best of what was. What was. Nothing is left. And nothing is left. Did you come here to teach me? Did you come here to learn? Did you set me on fire just to watch the boy burn? Yeah, nothing is left. On the call of a wild mother and child, nothing could stand in your way. Now nothing is left. Nothing is left. Oh, nothing is left. Nothing is left. Nothing is left. Thank you, folks. Be safe. Wear your mask.